Tom Thompson.
Yeah, Tom just called me to get over there.
You can't hear me.
Drop the hammer on.
Tommy.
You see the city?
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to let y'all know that our mayor and council member Karen Hesse Smith are in Washington, D.C. at the Ports to Plains meeting representing our great city of San Angelo. So that's where our two girls are at. We will now get started, and we will call this meeting to order at 8:31 on March the 5th, 2024. We have today Gary and Marcella Jenkins that would lead us in the chaplain prayer and pledges. Come forward, please. Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
God of love, we trust in you with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. We acknowledge you in all our ways and all our meetings so that you will direct our paths. Father, we do not rely on ourselves for effective results, for we are only human and often make mistakes. It is you who knows all things. So, Father, have your divine way in this meeting. Oh, Heavenly Father, continue to protect our first responders, giving them wisdom that they need to do their jobs with excellence. Also give our call center the wisdom and peace that passes all understanding, that they can make wise decisions. This we pray in the mighty and wonderful name of Jesus.
And would you please repeat after me? Say, pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, today we do not have any proclamations or recognitions, so we will go to public comment. Issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating their name and address and single-member district, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? Chief Brody?
Good morning, Council. Patrick Brody, Fire Chief, San Angelo. So I wanted to take a little opportunity to just kind of brief all the council and the citizens watching today of what we've got going on in the Panhandle and San Angelo's involvement. So just a quick briefing. So this fire, we initially sent a strike team. We sent one single resource and a strike team leader to the Panhandle on Sunday to pre-deploy. That area had high markers of a potential brush fire breaking out, and they got it pretty close. So our personnel initially staged in a city called Childress, which is about 200 miles from the fire. When the fire broke out on Monday, they were immediately dispatched to that area. They were dispatched to a town called Canadian that they began to protect and defend. Since then, another group, we sent out an additional brush truck with 4 personnel and 2 additional engine bosses. So each individual resource has an engine boss, a driver, and then also a firefighter on it. That engine boss is in charge of that single resource, a strike team leader, is in charge of 5 of those resources. So our local Texas Forest Service office here in San Angelo deployed with us. So Shane Krim, Cody Lambert and his team deployed to the Panhandle with us, and their entire team's up there too. So we have a strong presence of San Angelo, whether it be San Angelo Fire or Texas Forest Service, represented in the Panhandle. Altogether, San Angelo has 10 personnel up there. We have two individual resources, a strike team leader, and several engine bosses that are on tankers or different resources from other agencies. So where are we at with the fire? I told you initially 1 strike team was requested. That's 5 individual resources with complement of personnel, okay, and a strike team leader. Since then, 19 strike teams have been deployed to that area, over 323 personnel. They have air support, whether it be Chinook helicopter, fixed-wing aircraft, and they're beginning to get a handle on this situation. Last report I saw was, y'all see the news just like I do. 3% containment, 10% containment. Last I read was 15% containment. Spoke with the strike team leader this morning, and we're at 55% containment. There's a huge stride. That means we're starting to come over the hill just a little bit. Still a lot of work to be done, and those personnel are really, at first they were putting in, the normal shift is a 12-hour shift, but they're putting in 15, 16, 18 hours consecutively with no sleep out on the line. And I see pictures coming home from those guys up there working, and you can just see it all over their face. They're exhausted, but they're doing God's work up there, and I'm very proud of them. So total acres burned at this point is 1,076,000, just a little over that. And as y'all know, it's the largest grass fire in the state of Texas history, second largest in the United States. So our crews, along with Texas Forest Service, they're kind of stationed in between 2 cities, if you're familiar with them, Skellytown and Borger. I know where Borger's at. I've never heard of Skellytown. Some of y'all may have. But they cover from Stinnett all the way to Pampa. If you're familiar with the Panhandle at all, that's the area that they're covering. Friday of last week, I actually received a letter, or an email rather, from the community up there in Canadian, and it's from the Texas Municipal Police Association. They were impressed enough to take the time to communicate with us on how our guys are doing. So let me read this letter to y'all. Some of y'all have already read it. So I just wanted to pass along the message from citizens of Canadian, Texas, that was shared with me while I visited their town yesterday. I was advised if the San Angelo Fire Department Fire Department had not arrived when they did, there was a strong belief that the community would be an entire loss. They advised their volunteers did not have the resources or manpower to continue protecting the town when the wind shifted and began moving fire on them from 2 directions, but said that the San Angelo Fire Department arrived with little time to spare and began to hold the lines to keep the town from being a much larger loss. The citizens I spoke with were extremely appreciative of San Angelo's response and efforts to stop the fire from causing any worse loss to the community. Please pass this message along to the members of San Angelo Fire who responded to Canadian, as well as the San Angelo Fire Chief and members of the city staff who should know the impact the resources provide in our town. My heart is full of pride with these people.
Absolutely.
They're representing our city, and they're defending a community that they're not part of. So I wanted to share all that with y'all because it's something to be very proud of. So,
Let
thank you.
them know that we are very grateful for everything that they do, and our prayers are with them.
Yes, ma'am, I will do. Do y'all have any questions about the status?
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
When
ma'am.
that team returns, could they present themselves here so we can publicly recognize what they've done?
That's a good idea.
Yes, I will put that together.
Great.
And applause for them.
Thank you,
Tell them
guys.
Lisa, thank you for it.
Thank you, Chief Brody.
Mayor, if I could, before we move on, I heard the same report from another source that the San Angelo folks were, the timing was very good. They were very effective, very quick, and made a huge difference. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me while I get everything in place. I like y'all got a timer here. Did I just not notice that before? Oh, you did. Thank you very much. Okay, my name is Jackie Chestnut. I'm a licensed engineer in the state of Texas for 45 years, one of my proudest accomplishments. Back in the day when women weren't in this field, even close, I was the only one in my graduating class at the University of Texas at Austin in 1979 in every place I've ever worked as an engineer. And I've dealt with a lot of adversity in my 45 years, a lot that you will never experience. So I want to speak today on National Women's Month. We get a whole month. We're half the population, but they gave us a month. So I'm going to speak to that because it is my passion. I am a woman, one of two sexes, and I am a woman, so I speak as a woman, and that's the only way I can speak is as a woman. So the United States of America is 250 years old. I'm 67 years old. I've been here for 7 decades. I've worked very hard in this country for those 7 decades. Her story, it's not his story, it's her story. In 1913, we first got the right to vote. Can you imagine? We lived in a country where we couldn't vote. Even the slaves got to vote in 1868. We couldn't vote until 1913. We couldn't own property, 1920. We couldn't own property in our own names until 1935. We couldn't own property separate from our marriages until the 1950s. I'm one of the first women in the 1970s that was able to get financing on my own without a man's signature to buy my first home for $22,000 as a graduate from the University of Texas. That was quite a deal, okay? In 1989, working for Mobil Oil, I marched in the pin I wear now to mobilize for Women's March in 1989 to gain the rights to our bodies. We got the rights to our vote, the rights to our property, and the rights to our bodies. These are important things for women. We are half the population, and you wouldn't be here without us. So we have fought very, very hard for every one of these rights. I retired from Johnson & Johnson proudly. All these things. I have patents in my name. And I got to 2020 in this town, in this county, and I found out that we have not progressed very far as women. I live in a county and a town where people falsify wills on my spouse. They falsify powers of attorneys. They falsify medical powers of attorneys and HIPAA documents, advanced medical directives, and then they take my husband and they take him away from me and they starve him to death and they cut off his legs and return him to me from Johnson's funeral home, dead. So, the 1913 book, Women as World Builders. We are still not treated as humans. We have a long way to come. And in this town, in this county, we have a very long way to come.
Thank you, Jackie.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Shane Kelton, Executive Director of Public Works. Just wanted to give a quick update on the Nasworthy Bridge. I know y'all have probably been getting phone calls about that as well as we get phone calls. And so while that's not a city asset or a city project, I do visit with TxDOT about it some. So we want to give you a quick update this morning. Visited with the TxDOT area engineer yesterday afternoon. And while we did hear rumors of the work crew walking off the job and even saw a couple of reports on that, that is not the case. They were just clearly, they went from that job to another job, and now this morning they're back. So just want to give everybody an update and let everybody know that the work is progressing and moving forward. So, and if y'all have any questions, be glad to answer any, or if just wanted to let everybody know that the job is not stopped. We are moving forward.
Shane, what's the date of completion?
Not sure what their actually completion date is. They are planning hopefully to get the barriers on top of the bridge deck. They're aiming for like late April is kind of the time frame that they're kind of shooting for right now. Of course, that's dependent on weather and how the project moves forward, but that's kind of what they're looking at now to get the traffic back flowing again across the top of the actual bridge structure itself. And so they will still be doing more work underneath it. They are working this morning actually underneath the bridge structure. They are planning on, I think, Friday, as best they can tell right now, depending on the weather. We have that rain chance coming in on Thursday, but they are talking that maybe Friday, they'll be back on top of the deck working on the bridge joints themselves. And so, but if everything kind of flows the way that they're shooting for, they're hoping by the end of April that they're through with the bridge deck and can remove all of the barricades and let traffic return to normal.
Thank you.
Lucy?
Yes, Larry,
Since Shane is up here talking about bridges, quick update on Oak Street Bridge and what they're doing out on Main Street.
Okay, Oak Street Bridge, they're fixing to be wrapping up. They are nearing completion on that. Hope to be, the last I heard, their plan is to have it open by the end of the month. And so they have submitted their final lifting plan to TxDOT because they actually have to raise the bridge a little bit. So they've submitted a lifting plan for TxDOT to review. Once that's reviewed and everybody's comfortable and on the same page, they'll complete that portion of the project, and then it's just clean up and opening the bridge back up. And so they are aiming for the end of March to have the Oak Street Bridge back open.
Great.
The Main Street overpass, that's actually where the Nasworthy Bridge crew went to assist with. And so they did do the major pour for the beam, where they had to tear that beam out, or a portion of that beam out to replace it. They did frame it, put the concrete back in it. That's what they've been doing for the past week and a half. And so that's completed now. They're still, I do not have a time frame on that. So as far as when they believe that they'll have that completed, but the hard part with the getting it framed up and getting it poured, they do have that complete at this point.
If you find out, let me know. Both of those bridges are in District 3, and I get phone calls on a regular basis, so thank
Very
you.
good. I'll follow up with TxDOT and get you that. So.
Yes, Tom?
Shane, while you're up here.
Well, while he's
No,
up here,
can't.
it's public comment. We really shouldn't be having
Okay.
too much of a dialogue, so
Cool.
we could put him on the agenda, though. I know he would love that.
We're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank y'all.
Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we will close the section of the agenda today and move into the consent agenda. Larry, would you like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Item M.
Item M. Harry,
No, ma'am.
Tom,
I want to pull item L.
item L, and Tommy.
No, ma'am.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve all consent agenda with the exception of item L and M?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we've got a second from Tom, but I don't know who.
Just
Give it to Larry.
Larry
Give it to
will
Larry.
take it.
Larry.
So Larry made the motion and Tom seconded it. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? With no comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, now we'll go to item L. Second reading of an ordinance Z23-21, a request to expand the open structure overlay map to include the following area of Angelo Heights neighborhood, the 1,000, 3,000, and 4,000 blocks of Catalina Drive, 2,000, 3,000 blocks of Nunez Drive, 1,000 block of Lewis Drive, and 1,000 block of Cordell Drive, 2,700 block of Eunice Drive, and 2,700 block of Erlene Drive. Aaron Lanoy, you're on.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, and thank you. City staff is going to request that we pull this item and table it so that we can do a little more research for some questions that have come up as far as how we would apply the open structure overlay rules.
Okay.
So we would like to potentially table that item. And I don't know if Councilman Thompson has a specific question at this time, or if you just want to
No,
table
it's
that.
going the process. Thanks to Carl Word doing some research, discussion with y'all. Items came up yesterday. I appreciate it very much, Aaron. I think it deserves more attention for us to make sure we do it right as we move forward, and I appreciate your work on that very much.
Yes, sir.
Aaron, is there a specific date you want to table it to, so we might be able to address some notice issues through that process?
Well, I hope we address the issues and could bring it back at the next council meeting on the 19th. Mr. Thompson, do you have any ideas from your reading of that's an appropriate time to bring that back?
I think that'll be we can bring back the next council. I think we're going to solve everything we need tomorrow morning.
And just to clarify that, any changes we make would not require going back to a prior board?
If we're just changing.
As long as that's the
yeah.
case, then the next meeting is fine.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and table that item L for the next city
Yeah.
council meeting.
We do need a motion.
Oh, do you need a
Yes,
motion?
and
Okay.
public comment on that.
Okay,
So moved.
okay. With the first and second motions, we go ahead and, any public comment on this item? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. And we'll go ahead and table that. We'll put it on the next reading is item M, second reading of an ordinance for PD 23-08, a request to rezone the Ranch and Estate zoning district to the planned development zoning district with the underlining general commercial zoning, allowing kennels, parking, exercise area, staff area, and the housing of dogs, cats, and small animals awaiting adoption, being 5.436 acres located at 1521 South Concho Park Drive. Mr. Vinoy, you're on again.
Yeah, this is a repeat of the previous one. I'm still concerned about sewer plumbing and noise abatement. Do you have anything else to your previous comments?
Well, I do know that Bob is working on those things, and they're working with a group to investigate the facility. They are going to come forward with some plans for the upgrades. We have not seen those plans as far as a review team yet, but we will be ensuring that they are looking at that, and that was part of the conditions that the planning and development team, building permits, engineering, everybody gets to look at those plans before they move forward with them.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion, Larry?
Pardon?
Would you like to make a motion? Okay, motion is made.
Second.
Go ahead, Sarah. Second by Harry. We'll have public comment on item M. With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Motion passes 5-0. With that, we will go on to our regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempt from the time limit above and instead must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. Item 6A, consider approving tax increment and reinvestment zone tiers incentive funding for the South Tiers private project at 36 East Tuig, totaling $75,000. Mr. Vinoy, you are on again. It is your show today.
Thank you. So this morning, we are revisiting the table item for funding for 36 East Tuig. The funding request from the Tiers Board and their recommendation was the $75,000, and they are recommending the full $75,000 amount. So they do have a proposed match. They are doing the $51,843 match. The summary of work is facade improvements, historic preservation, restoring the 18 awnings with metal material, and replacing the door units and updating with ADA framework. So here on this slide, we'll linger for just a moment. So right here, this is the proposed color. And that is a traditional color that they have that our DHRC design team and commission reviewed and approved. They also have, let me clear that off. This, I'm going to just do it over here, is what is actually proposed. So you can see that they have this nice awning that's going to give some shade to those windows, replacing an older shade that just has not been able to hold up. So from there, I'm going to go to this image. So this image here on the left, This has been confirmed to the Texas Historical Commission as well as the archives over at ASU that this picture here on this side was taken in 1929, right after the Cactus opened. It was built in 1928, and you can see right down here very clearly that they've had awnings on this building from the beginning. This picture here on this side, let me clear that off for us. On this side, this is when a major renovation took place, started in 1984, that they were renovating the inside. They actually took off the awnings to start cleaning things up, and there's actually some other images, but there's some of the debris left from the awnings on there, and since then, they've been replaced, and now they just need to be upgraded again. I did like it that these two pictures are from pretty much the same angle, and so this helps us a whole lot in verifying that what they're replacing back was there from the beginning. With that, I know there was a couple of questions from the last time that we met about funding in 2011. We did do our research and go back and find that they did receive a $5,000 grant for secondary egress out of the basement. We also showed that they may have received a tax abatement at that time, but that did not actually occur. That was awarded to a different recipient during 2011. We've been able to confirm that both with our finance department, that they've been able to go back and look and see that we did not issue anything. We did go back and look at records through city council agendas. We did not find any records. And we also talked with Bob Sheeman, who was running the program at the time, and said, no, it was actually a property at 217 South Chadbourne that received the tax rebate that year. It was not the property at 36 East Tuig. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So we do have the approval of DHRC, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, guys, do y'all have any questions? Council?
Your district.
This is in my district, so I'll make a motion to approve this as presented. There was 300-plus pages of background information, and I can tell you that I went through it more than once. The owner of this property started this process more than 2 years ago, and because of things that happened, here we are today again. I do not want to delay this any further.
Okay, Harry has made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tom Thompson. Do I have public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Jackie Chestnut, and I have a question, please, as I learn the process of how y'all do things in the city related to things like this, because I have some things myself that may go through this process, and I just want to make sure I understand. So the commission that approves this, okay, I'm sorry, I should have my notes in front of me, that's a city board that you go to, and they approve tax dollars to be allotted for certain projects like this? Is that how it works?
This is a time for public comment, not
Okay.
questions. I'm sure the
Okay.
planning staff would be happy to
Okay.
discuss any of your questions.
So that's
with
what,
you.
yeah, okay, sorry, who do I go to?
Aaron, right there.
Aaron, so you can help me with that, very good, so that's it. Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Any further comment?
Zane White, District 6. And I can address that last question. The way it works, Jackie, is DHRC has to approve a project for that make sure that it complies with historical preservation guidelines and regulations. Then it goes to tiers, and tiers can't take it unless DHRC approves it first. After tiers gets it, they send it to city council, and then city council makes the final call on the deal. What's been happening, particularly for the last 2 years on this awning canopy fiasco is misrepresentation regarding the project itself, outrageous interference and malfeasance on the part of the planning department as far as overlooking certain things and running things through. I've said this for 2 years in front of you guys. Project is leaf flugers. It's documented. That's the sad thing. Things get overlooked, rules get changed, and that's what's been happening here. My last meeting here, I made it really clear that and it's proven as a fact, that the DHRC meeting that approved those metal awnings, that was an erroneous call. The reason it was an erroneous call was because the chairman asked whether or not the metal awnings were historically appropriate, and the planning representative said, and you can look this up on the YouTube video for January 26, 2024, from 31 minutes and 26 seconds to 31 minutes and 48 seconds. Sherry said, looking at the city's historic preservation design guidelines, metal canopies can be considered. It is in the Interior Secretary's design elements if they maintain a similar look and color to the existing cloth canopy. That's false information. That's a fact that it's false information. It's easily verifiable. That is the one thing that approval hinged on, was, are they historically appropriate? They aren't. And that started the ball rolling. Then tears.
There's your time limit,
Okay.
Mr.
Well-
White. Thank you so much for your comments.
The whole thing is corrupt, and that's provable. And I will prove it if you guys don't look it up.
Any further comment? Public comment? Okay, with no one coming forward, we will move into, I'm sorry, I forgot to take the vote. With that being said, let's take a vote on item A. All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye, please. That would be a 5-0 vote, and motion passes. Item B, discussion, direction, and possible action on the following. Number 1, amendments to Section 406, bed and breakfast establishment and short-term rentals of the zoning ordinance. 2, consider a resolution calling a joint public hearing of the City Council and the Planning Commission regarding amendments to Section 406, bed and breakfast and short-term rentals of the zoning ordinance. Section 313, use table of the zoning ordinance, and establishing alternative notice procedures. Mr. Vanoy, you're on again.
Thank you, Mayor Gonzalez. That's good to say today. But thank you, City Council, for allowing us to come and present a discussion item. We're just looking for some direction and maybe a request at the end of this discussion of what our next steps should be. So city staff has been working with Planning Commission over the last few months, I'd say 3 to 4 months, about looking at our short-term rental and bed and breakfast ordinance to modify some things to be updated. What I wanted to go through very quickly first was just the purpose statements out of our zoning ordinance to kind of remind us of why we have our zoning ordinance and why we want to do some regulations for short-term rentals and bed and breakfast. So again, why do we want to modify it? And it's, again, promote beneficial and appropriate development of all land and most desirable use of land in accordance with a well-considered plan, protect character and establish pattern of desirable development in each area, prevent or minimize land use incompatibilities and conflicts among different land uses, maintain property values by stabilizing expectations and ensuring predictability in development, and establish process that effectively and fairly applies regulations and standards of zoning ordinance and respects rights of property owners and interests of citizens. So those are our purpose statements that our department looks at any time that we're trying to make a change or bring something forward. So I talk about our short-term rental and bed and breakfast. Our goals with doing this is to protect the health and safety of our neighborhoods, citizens and visitors, with emphasis on child safety around school properties. Our other goal is to provide a streamlined review and renewal process for short-term rentals and bed and breakfast property owners where they know expectations of ordinance and consequences for not following the ordinance. The third goal was to provide for continued growth of commercial and multifamily areas which are appropriate locations close to community amenities as locations for short-term rental and bed and breakfast properties. So those are our goals that we're trying to do with some of our modifications with Section 406. So as you know, these are some of the repeat things, but I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. In the discussion is a reference to a license requirement instead of the conditional use. We're saying, okay, let's just keep the conditional use. There's not really a separate license process per se. In the residential districts of RS1, RS2, RS3, and Ranch and Estate, these properties will require a conditional use process that they would come to the city, go before Planning Commission, and obtain a conditional use with conditions potentially of how they need to operate their property. Also in those districts, there will be a 500-foot separation between the properties from property line to property line, as well as a 500-foot separation from public schools. And that separation from the public schools is from the areas in which the children, students, and everything are working and being educated. Currently, our ordinance says neither of those would be a variable per ordinance, which means they could not go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. In commercial districts, there would be no conditional use required, and of course, it's got general commercial, heavy commercial, office warehouse, office commercial, neighborhood center, heavy commercial, light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing. We'd also eliminate the requirements that are no longer allowed, specifically talking about outdoor gatherings. You can't really prevent those. If you're able to have a Christmas party at your house and invite all your friends, why can't you do that at a short-term rental? Same thing with the road pavement. Some of our roads are not up to that 30-foot standard, and so we can't really limit them because of something they can't control. We did request to shorten the process for an appeal so that it can move quicker, so that we can get the operators and the neighbors' answers quicker if somebody needs to appeal a decision. And it also provides a revocation process of that conditional use that's providing protection for our neighborhoods by the Planning Commission at an annual process. So annually, short-term rentals and bed and breakfast would come to the city. They would report all of their stuff. We would be double checking to see if they have any violations. Have they been paying their hotel occupancy taxes? And then we actually have set forth in the ordinance a process of revocation if we need to revoke that conditional use. We really don't have that right now. And this is really the one thing that allows us to do true enforcement against that conditional use is we could revoke it through Planning Commission if necessary. All of our evidence right now is pointing that we haven't had to really do that. We've been very successful with the operators that have come in. Most of them are following the rules. We're following up with some others that are getting them coming through, and that's why you see a higher case count right now of trying to get them to come into compliance. The operators are looking forward to that administrative process. It's less laborsome for them. They're able to come in and show, hey, we've actually done our job. This is a business for us or a process for them. And we always hear that, even from our Planning Commission chair, that if they're not taking care of their property as a short-term rental, they're not going to be successful. And I think that evidence is very true. Those that are not taking care of their property, not maintaining noise levels, not maintaining, irritating neighbors, they're not successful. The ones that are doing it correctly, they're very successful. So here on the residential side, I kind of just broke down on the residential just to get drill down just a little bit deeper. So again, that's that 500-foot buffer distance between any other short-term rental or bed and breakfast from property line to the property line. On the single-family residential and ranch and estate zoning, There was a question about, can more than one structure on that property be used as a short-term rental or Airbnb or bed and breakfast, excuse me? And the answer is no. Zoning allows only one primary structure. You can't use the secondary structure for living space. You can only use the primary structure. So zoning controls that, not just the short-term rental ordinance. Schools, again, in RS1, RS2, that should be RS3, and R&E district also have a 500-foot buffer distance. They are required a conditional use in residential. They will get a permit and an inspection annually from the building permits department. And again, they will have an annual renewal process that's administrative. Any questions on the residential before I go to the commercial, which is just a little bit, and I've got some slides as well just to give some examples.
Aaron, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we extend the footage on the family, the homes that are close by a school property from 500 to 1,000 feet?
We could do that. That would be a bigger buffer.
This would be just for the safety of the children that would be around the school, that maybe someone would come and do the Airbnb, and then we not know anything about their background and stuff. So
Okay.
for that reason, I would like to see that 1,000 feet.
And what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring some images of what those impacts may be,
Okay.
of finding some of the schools that are in our neighborhoods, and let's put that 1,000-foot buffer on it and see what that looks like, so that y'all can have some visuals with what that may be if we're able to move forward.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, any questions?
On number 3, besides schools, did you give any consideration to child care facilities or areas where children routinely congregate?
We did. Our biggest challenge with that is you don't have to register to be a true daycare all the time. There are times that do mom and pops, and there's even after-school programs, and there's lots of other things that happen, and we just are not able to give an accurate listing that we could keep updated, and it would be a very big challenge to do enforcement to make sure that we're not misrepresenting something that we may talk to the short-term rental or the bed and breakfast applicant and say, well, we think it's fine, but then come to find out maybe a church is operating something that we just weren't aware of. And that's very challenging.
Yeah, the Planning Commission also talked through that and just felt it was impossible to enforce because there's no way of knowing where all those are, as opposed to a public school where you will know where that is.
There are some established youth athletic facilities. The one that jumped into mind was Southside Rec Center. Can that not apply to them too?
Right now, it only applies to schools, so that doesn't. You could add, you would probably have to designate, because various places can run after-school programs, a church or a facility, so we don't monitor those either. So that it gets to be difficult. So you would have to, in this case, if you want to say a specific rec center, you'd almost have to name which one it is.
Any further questions from the council? Okay.
Okay, so here's some of our imaging, and this, I apologize that the image seems kind of small, but all of the pink areas are those residential areas that are RS1, RS2, RS3, and ranch and estate. So that's single family, 2-family, 3-family. That is not necessarily your multifamily areas. Now, some multifamily areas fall in there, but usually RM1 and RM2 is set aside for multifamily, in which our city and our ordinances and our codes, even the building codes, sees those as commercial properties. And so you'll see that the commercial areas, again, through our corridors, are in that green area. So now you want to know what the little red dots and the blue dots are. The red dots are short-term rentals. The blue dots are schools with a 500-foot buffer around just their property line as of right now. Now you can see from this expanded view, there are some schools that are definitely neighborhood schools, and then you have some schools that are adjacent to commercial areas and neighborhoods, and then you have some schools that are clearly in the commercial area. And I've got a kind of a zoomed in of an area in just a moment. So here was a discussion point from last time. On the right of this, the pink area, that's RS2, so that's two-family residential. On the left, the yellow and the green, the yellow is RM1, so low-rise multifamily, and the green is commercial. And I tried to make the transparency to where you can see that most of these properties on this side were probably built out as single-family, but they're in the RM1 district. RM1 allows a multitude of structure types. Now, some of these properties could go with duplexes in the future. Some of these, somebody may buy up an entire block and do some kind of multifamily in the future. What we're saying is this zoning line between residential, true residential, and then that turns into more of a commercial or an area that's moving towards commercial, we would allow short-term rentals in by right. They would not have to do a conditional use. On the residential side, the RS2, they would need to do a conditional use. I know that was one of the questions. This red one right here just happens to be a current short-term rental. That's why we kind of took this image a little closer. This is kind of close to the downtown area. If you kept going west, you'd run into downtown. As you keep going east, you're going to go back into neighborhoods until you hit Bell Street. Any questions on that slide? Or what it represents? Okay. So here's our commercial districts. So again, we lump our RM1 and RM2, low-rise and high-rise multifamily in with our commercial because that's where our ordinances and our codes, our building codes, lump them in. They would be allowed without a conditional use. If they were to go to a short-term rental or a bed and breakfast, they may still have a change of occupancy process to go through the building code. That is still a process we do all day, every day with different businesses that go from maybe retail, then they may want to be a mechanic shop, and then they may want to come back and do something different. Well, they have to do a change of occupancy, which triggers inspections by our building division and our fire marshal. And so as we looked at this more closely and drilled down, our commercial and RM1 areas, they are getting those change of occupancies and those inspections as needed. Also in our commercial areas, there was a question last time about property next to each other, about this buffer distance in commercial. There really isn't one in a commercial area or an RM1 or an RM2 area. There's no distance requirement. So here's an example. This is off of North Chadbourn, and you can see Grape Creek that kind of snakes through there. The property right here, 4003 North Chadbourn, is a short-term rental. They also own that property right there, and they are hoping to turn both of those into short-term rentals. They're both residential type structures. They just are in a commercial district. Well, right now, our current ordinance prevents this structure from being a short-term rental. It has to be a business of some other kind. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense when you start considering in general commercial, you could have a hotel and a hotel and a hotel. And we don't have any separate rules for them, and they have a less than 30 days population that come in and go out all the time. So why would we treat our short-term rentals differently in our commercial areas? And that's kind of what we've been talking with Planning Commission, and they agree it doesn't make sense to require a separation distance or a conditional use process in those commercial areas. Then here's I believe this is my last slide. This is the commercial downtown area. And again, we went back with just schools, and so we looked at anything that was an elementary or secondary school. This here is a public school, and we have two private ones that are right here, and so they both have buffers around them. And of course, this is in our downtown area. The green obviously is traditional commercial or central business district. This pink area is actually the Shannon, most of that is Shannon property, and it's under a planned development, so that's why it changed a different color. But if you look at this school here, this is Chadbourn that comes right through here and across the river. And I think one of the things that we're looking for our central business district, our downtown area, is short-term rentals and livability in our downtown area. If we have buffers around our schools, in commercial areas, that may prevent that in some of our commercial areas. Now, if you wanted to be a hotel right in here, there's no prohibition. So again, in commercial areas, do we want a buffer around schools when you can still have a hotel there, but you can't have a short-term rental? So that's one of the questions that we probably need to have discussion on when we meet with as a joint meeting, if that's possible. Let me see if I can get all that off of there. There we go.
Aaron, and that's the 500-foot buffer, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is the 500-foot buffer. That is not the 1,000-foot buffer. So if we did the 1,000-foot, that would be twice that size and be pretty significant in a commercial area. We'll certainly show both commercial and residential what those differences would be.
Aaron, oh, I'm sorry. Just a minute, Harry. Aaron, I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sure everyone up here knows it, but for the public, what is the difference between your short-term rental and your bed and breakfast?
The biggest difference is bed and breakfast, the operator lives on site.
Okay.
Short-term rental, they rent the entire property, no operator there. You have to have a local operator or property owner within the Tom Green County. But bed and breakfast, they must live on site.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, Harry?
Yes, on this particular slide that you've got here, you've got one bed and breakfast that really looks like it falls up here at the freshman campus. And that freshman campus is no longer going to house students as of this next August. Will that influence, the school district will still own the property, but there won't be any students on there?
Well, that's something we would have to look to see, because we don't know when they may decide to, well, let's just have a class over there. We've got enough good facility to have one or two classes, and so that's very difficult for city staff to know. This short-term rental here, I know the hospital uses it a lot, particularly when they have professional staff that come in and say, hey, you can just stay right up here the road. You can come and do a education thing at the hospital. So I think it would be very challenging for us to know, particularly as a school that, unless they sold the property and somebody new bought the property that we knew was not an education facility. But that it'd be very difficult to know in the future, are they having students there until we've already maybe made a decision, and then that causes problems.
And
The reason I asked that question is I know Shannon would like to have additional properties as STRs because they have people from out of town coming for example, cancer treatment or heart treatments, whatever the case may be, and those relatives would like to be close to where the hospital is at. So anyway, it's something I think we need to see if there's a resolution on.
And Harry, I think that's the reason staff and even the Planning Commission really recommends that in commercial districts, if a school's in that commercial district, you don't count that. The commercial district, it's allowed by right, because you can have a hotel right there beside it. We're not going to restrict them. So why should we treat something else different in that commercial district? So we would recommend commercial district, school or not, it's allowed. No buffer.
Well, before I move to this slide, which is asking for us to set a date in the future to sit down and do a joint meeting, are there any other scenarios, questions? Is there anything when we come back for a joint discussion with Planning Commission and City Council that you would like to see? Like Councilwoman Gonzalez's suggestion about the 1,000-foot. Is there anything visually that you'd like us to see to try to research to help this move forward?
Question.
Yes, Tommy?
I'm just wondering if there would be any benefit, because it may be more work than there is benefit to doing the work. Would there be benefit to see the current child care facilities, which I'm going to assume are in probably RS1, RS2, RS3 district, I'm assuming. But to see where those are, and would we want to consider a larger buffer, a smaller buffer? I don't know that there's any benefit to that. That just runs through my mind.
I would say the biggest challenge first is you're going to have incomplete data. You're only going to get what's listed somewhere, you're not going to get everything that's listed. So there's a chance that there's other properties in that area that are childcare-like, and so we're not going to be able to give a true representation of where they are and are not.
Yeah.
If they're running it out of their home,
Yeah.
for instance, we have no idea of
Yeah.
knowing where those are, and it's impossible to keep up with it.
Yeah. That was the reason for the question. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Tom.
Aaron, when we come back to do our joint meeting, a concern I have is, after listening to what we were discussed some in executive the last time we met, existing short-term rentals and what our pending reach is going to do to those that exist. I have strong reservations against taking something away from somebody that's already had that. So I just want that to be in the forefront of anybody's mind. I mean, that happened to that one guy over in Santa Rita last year. He just happened to be there on a bad day, and they basically terminated his STR. He came back through a variance and an appeal, and we gave it back to him. But I like looking at some of these things here, and with what pending legislation, and basically what San Angelo would be liable for is if we took something away. I think we certainly need to keep that and maybe educate the community on, hey, these are things that we have to keep in mind pending legislation from whatever district courts, the one in Fort Worth or the one in Austin. I think the community would be good if we give a public information sheet or something of that to at least know kind of what guidelines we're trying to follow. That's all I've got. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
And thank you, Councilman Thompson. Right now, we have the ordinance written to where those properties that are existing are out there as a short-term rental, they would actually get to maintain their distances if there was something that came forward that would make them non-conforming. We don't want to take away their and make them non-conforming, and so that's how we have the ordinance currently drafted. But I do agree we should put some public education together so that we have some stuff for the public.
Yes, Larry?
Early on in this discussion, I believe one of the situations that provoked this was zero lot line houses, patio homes. Still feel a little uncomfortable about this.
Yeah. So those would fall into the RS3 typically. Those are RS3 zoned homes. And so in RS3, they would fall into all of the, let me get back here to that residential slide. They would fall into all of these requirements. So they would still have the 500-foot separation. They would still have the buffer from the schools. They would still have the conditional use process that they would have to go through and a revocation process in case they were a bad player for some reason. So our RS3 districts, that's why we intentionally put them in there. Now, RM1 does allow some zero lot line homes, but most folks are looking at the RM1 as a smaller lot line. And I think that's more of a zoning ordinance issue than a short-term rental issue. And I think we were going to look at how to address that in the future. All right, let me see if I can get to go the right way here. So if there are no other questions at this moment, I'm going to say that this is what the city staff and planning commission is recommending to move forward, is an amendment and update of section 406 to the zoning ordinance, an amendment and update to section 313, which is our use table with reference of short-term rentals and bed and breakfast establishments of where they're allowed or where they need a conditional use. We are requesting a date of April 16th, 2024, which is about 6 weeks away approximately, that we want to make sure that we have ample time for the public to come and talk with us, if any of the operators wanted to come and talk to us, so that we can put this on our website and folks can digest the draft ordinance to see if we need to make any changes, so that we can have a good solid meeting with a joint meeting on April the 16th. With that, we would need to do the proper noticing with the Texas Open Meetings Act, which would be a public posting, a newspaper notice, and a website notice. And that meeting on the 16th of April would be a joint meeting, a combined meeting of Planning Commission and City Council.
Is everyone available that day? What day of the week is it? It's Tuesday. the
Regular
16th.
meeting day, yeah.
It's a regular meeting, okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to throw you a curveball, too bad.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any further questions from the council?
No, but I think we're all in favor.
Yeah, I'd say schedule it on the 16th.
Do we need an actual motion?
Yes. With no further questions, do I have a motion for approval on item B?
So,
Second, or
Larry?
Larry made a second, and Harry made the first motion. So with that, do we have public comment? Jackie, come on up.
I just kind of want to make a general comment, Jackie Chestnut. As a person who lives with codes and regulations for a living, that's my life, commercial particularly, because that's where I live. And in dealing with this, as we're moving into residential and all of the things that we're looking at regulating in residential as we move in this, and I've watched this process over the years, I would caution everyone here that the bottom line of what we're supposed to do is cost versus containment. And as we put more and more of these regulations in place, and you all are tasked with keeping these regulated, and we're already not able to regulate what we have, that when you look at saying, or how are you going to go out and check these 500 feet and all these other things on a regular basis to control these things you write in paper, how are you going to do it, and who's going to do it, and how are you going to pay for it? And also the people that are just simply trying to run a business out of their home. My brother has one of these short-term rentals. You're over-regulating them, and then do you start applying ADA regulations? How far do you go with the regulations of commercial when you move into this kind of stuff? Residential, we don't have to apply these things. So that becomes a question as well. And I would love to be more involved in the discussion because I think we need to back off on some of this limiting of everybody's lives with these government controls where you want to come in and do this. Because we're just trying to live our lives out here and make our lives go along and live our lives. And every time you put one of these regulations in control, you limit that. And you cost us money, and you cost you money. And the government already can't pay for its own self anyway. Because after all, you're not a business. You're the government. We run businesses out here, and we put the money in there because we supply the money. So I would ask y'all to start looking at your regulations as I sit here and I go through all this stuff and see what you're proposing for a person like me who simply wants to run a short-term rental out of a home that I own in this city. And how much is that going to cost me? And the question becomes, am I going to do that now? Because it's going to cost me so much to do it, and I got to deal with so much paperwork that I don't think I want to do that. Because I don't want somebody controlling my life that closely. And I live my life very well, but I don't need that much regulation. And that's what y'all are doing here to the individual citizen. Bad enough, I mean, we do it with commercial because we deal with public access. That's the reason I have to do it. But when you're getting in here, you're getting really close. It's really dangerous. And I would caution you with that. And y'all need to back off some on this.
Thank you for your comments, Jackie. Any further public comment?
My name is Doug Robinson. I own a couple of short-term rentals. Been doing it for about a year. And, you know, I've gone to all the planning commissions and the ZBA and all that. And, you know, at the very beginning, it was something that was kind of concerning to people. But I'm redoing a house on Catalina. The house looks a lot better. I've had two people come up and say, hey, when is this going to be ready? Because we want it to be ready by Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, and because they want their families to come in and be able to stay in it. The 500 feet, there are several reasons that doesn't work. Number one, listen to staff. Your staff are doing a great job doing this. Listen to what they do. They're going to all these things. They're living this every day. But the 500 feet, the reason it doesn't work, if that would have worked, and the new proposition of the ZBA not being able to bring one to the ZBA, I've had two houses that I thought were 500 feet away. Because on the map, it showed 500 feet away. Now, this isn't staff's fault. This is the vendor's fault, I guess. But turns out they weren't 500 feet away. And if y'all take it to where we can't bring it to ZBA, well, then I've lost $500,000 in houses that I can't do what I thought I was going to be able to do with it. So, I mean, just whenever you are looking at this, and when you go to the things and you have to get your license redone, they say, well, has there been any police incidents, has there been any code complaints? And there's not. And the people that are around us, our neighbors, they're all good with it because we're improving the neighborhood. There was a guy at the last planning commission meeting. He was a younger guy. He's trying to get into the Airbnb business, and he did a house on Bird Street. Well, with the 500, he said, his house is like the best house over there because he's fixed it up for a short-term rental. He said, if we didn't have the 500 feet, I'd be fixing these other houses up, and it would improve the whole neighborhood. And so don't look at it as a bad thing as short-term rentals, because they're really not. And we get so many families here that are just excited to be in San Angelo, excited to be able to stay together because they're from different cities, and they can't do that in hotels. So, but listen to staff, and I'm glad that y'all are getting them new software. Their software is terrible. It's from 1996. How many of y'all were working on Windows 95 right now? So get them new software, which is great. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Okay, with no further public comment, we will take a vote. That's where I'm at. Take a vote. All in favor of item B, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now, there is no executive session, so we will go 8B. Due to that fact, we will no consideration in any items. 8B is consider approving various board nominations. Design and Historic Review Commission, Brooks Weiner, SMD 6 to the first term ending in September 2025. Public Housing Authority, Janice Carson, Mayor to the first term ending March 2026. Do I have a motion for the board nominations that were just read?
Move approval.
Second.
Second by Thompson. And we will have public comment? No public comment? We will take a vote. All in favor of these nominations, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Okay, now it's time for a motion for, no, we need an announcement in consideration of future agenda items. Do we have any that we would want to see?
We have two members up at Washington now. I assume they're discussing the interstate
Yes.
project. I wondered if they could report on
And they
what
probably
occurred up
will.
there.
I'm sure the mayor will come back and give us a report on that. So with that, we have a motion for adjournment.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will adjourn at 9:37. Thank you so much
Not
for
a
your
record,
attendance.
but pretty close, lady.
Good job, Lucy.
Nice job.